Welcome back. Well, actually, this is the first episode. So, welcome to another take on personal leadership with Tim Marsh and myself, Nick Phillips. This is all about personal leadership in the real world. So, we thought it would be fitting, I suppose, to start off with the topic of personal productivity. So, what's front of mind for you at the moment around personal productivity, Tim?
The first thing that comes to mind is how fundamental it is to the success of a leader in this day and age, but how it's so lacking in the effort and energy and the importance that it is seen to play at this point in time. So you've got people who are working on all sorts of complex development pieces for themselves and for their leaders of their teams, but missing this absolute gem of an opportunity because it's not seen to be important or they're too busy doing other things.
And that's a big factor, isn't it? Because if they don't even feel like they have the time to focus on themselves, it's not going to happen.
You get it, but you get the irony of it. And as people move up in roles, their worlds become more complex. And the more complex they become, the more distracted they are potentially from this piece that is so fundamental to what they do. Everyone has a certain amount of energy, but everyone has exactly the same amount. They have 24 hours in a day.
Yes.
Each person has different levels of energy, but if as the day progresses, you take time, effort and energy and you give it to something, for some people they run out. And are they running out on the things that are actually more important? So being more productive is about what you do with time, effort and energy.
I guess the question I had in my head was, because we've got leaders from all different levels in organisations, and of course the mantra is that the higher in the organisation, the more pressure might be on you in decision making and that sort of thing. So is it more important for a leader that might just be a team leader level, let's say, is this more important for them or even right up to executive level? Actually, in addition to the question is it more important down here or up here, and is there more time needed somewhere to devote towards this piece?
The way I'd answer it, there's probably two parts to it. Number one, I think it's important for all levels. However, the higher you up towards the top, the more a 1% improvement impacts on all of the other levels. So if you're at CEO level and you get a 1% improvement in your personal productivity, the cascade of that down through the organisation is more significant than someone who's at, say, team lead level. And that's not belittling anyone, it's just saying
it makes sense.
The people at the highest level of the organisation putting their time, effort and energy on the right things, it has to have a flow down effect throughout the organisation. Because what we're hearing all the time is people are saying, you know, I'm frustrated with my boss because they seem to be focusing on this or not focusing on this, or I can't get hold of them, or it'll be in different shapes and forms, but the impact of what's going on above them from a personal productivity impact of that person who is above them obviously it gets carried down in some way, shape or form.
That's interesting, because the next question I had, I guess, was around if you're in a position where your direct line manager above you doesn't subscribe to this thinking. What can you do if you have this desire and you can see that it's going to be a benefit to you, but say your boss isn't allowing you the time to be able to do it? Maybe they're passing down things onto your plate. How do you manage the juggle there?
There's always things that are in your control, so that would still come back to that personal productivity piece of what am I doing with my time, effort and energy. So a good example would be, am I spending time on getting frustrated with my boss? Am I losing time simply in that? Am I walking in first thing in the morning and I've already told myself it's going to be an average or below average day because of what's occurred before, because of what my boss is doing? So that's just a attitudinal check before you come in. You know, am I above the line? You know, in our terminology as well. So the second thing is there will be patterns with some of these things. If you can pick some patterns on that, if you know your boss every day is going to be throwing certain types of work, or it might just be at certain times of the day is throwing certain times of work, what can you do to adjust, once again, your personal productivity to get a better outcome from that? Because at the end of the day, you can't control your boss. but you can control what you can do. And this is the Covey's circles, around control. You can influence your boss, and there is a situation there which it won't be in all occasions, but once again, there's patterns to what your boss is doing. Are they throwing things that they don't believe that they're capable of doing, or are they throwing things because they think you're the genius? Have you reinforced some of those behaviours over time about just catching everything that they throw?
And teaching them
bad
how to
habits?
treat you. Yes.
Is there also a conversation to be had around your understanding of where your time, effort, and energy should be going versus what your boss thinks? Because the irony is that in those situations, normally when people are throwing things, they themselves are caught up obviously in being busy, and they're probably not spending a lot of time going, is this a high value thing for you to be doing? They're probably just going, it's not for me, and hence why they're throwing it.
Delegating it, yeah.
So even with the most difficult of bosses, I've seen incredible results with people having a conversation, just going, can I be clear where you really want me to be spending my time, effort and energy, because it makes the most difference? Coming to that discussion with your own thoughts first, so it's not just your boss going, I want you to do everything that I throw at you. Like as an example, it's probably not a good example of a high value, because it allows some more meaningful conversation around, if that's where you want my time to be going, can we continue to talk about on days and in weeks about where things that don't fit within that fit, so that I can actually help you better. I can do a better job in supporting you. If I understand where you want me to be focused, if something comes that doesn't appear to be focused, I want to be able to talk to you about it, not because I want to be painful and challenge you.
No,
I just want to understand I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So in that conversation, I genuinely believe there would be a number of people who their bosses would go, actually now that we've had this conversation, I am actually a little bit more focused on what I'm throwing at. And once again, it might only be a 1%er, but you start talking about 1%ers in a week, and if you're working on something that's in your control and your boss starts to make some subtle changes on what they're putting across, all of a sudden you're starting to claw back some things that before may have seemed outside of your control and very frustrating. So there's a number of other things, but there's a starting point for people, rather than they feel like I'm completely out of control and I can't do anything about it. Yes.
We've kind of touched on what I think it will be, but something that we want to do in this particular show is leave our viewers with a commitment to themselves over the next 7 days.
Yes. Yep.
Between now and the next episode. So what does that look like for everybody?
I think the first starting point is for people to, even for their own purposes, is to say, where do I believe, given my role and my expertise and what the job needs at the moment, is what are those things that represent absolute high value for my time, effort and energy? I think that's a starting point because it's in their control. For you yourself as an individual to be clear on that is an advancement in its own right, because it's the cornerstone of how people make decisions about what they're doing in a day.
Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.